The selection. Dr. Sarah Mitchell never expected her groundbreaking research on human genetic adaptation to catch the attention of beings from another world. As she stood in her dimly lit laboratory at the Astrogenetic Research Institute, the air suddenly crackled with an otherworldly energy. The familiar smell of sanitized equipment and biochemical reagents gave way to something alien, a sweet, metallic scent that made her skin tingle. The being that materialized before her defied earthly description. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, with crystalline skin that seemed to capture and reflect light in impossible ways, High Matriarch Zena of the Luminary spoke with a voice that resonated directly in Sarah's mind. Dr. Mitchell, your work on genetic restoration has not gone unnoticed. We require your expertise, and more. Sarah's scientific curiosity warred with her instinct for self-preservation. The Luminari were legendary among Earth's scientific community, an all-female species whose mastery of biotechnology had helped humanity cure several devastating diseases. But they remained mysterious, their true motives unknown. More. Sarah managed to ask, her hand unconsciously touching the data crystal pendant around her neck, the one containing her life's work. The High Matriarch's skin shifted colors, displaying patterns that Sarah recognized as signs of emotional expression. Our species faces extinction. Despite our technological advancement, we cannot solve the fundamental flaw in our genetic code. Each generation becomes more unstable. We need human genetic material, specifically yours. The laboratory's emergency lights began pulsing, likely triggered by the alien energy signature. Sarah knew security would arrive soon, but the High Matriarch seemed unconcerned. You've studied our previous collaborations with Earth, Zena continued. But what you don't know is that those were tests, evaluating human genetic compatibility. You, Dr. Mitchell, have shown unprecedented potential for integration with our genome. 2 more Luminari materialized. Younger, their crystalline forms more vibrant. The High Matriarch gestured toward them. My daughters, Lyra and Venna. They represent our species' last generation. Without intervention, their children will not survive gestation. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. The Luminari's previous medical contributions had saved millions of lives, but they'd always maintained strict control over their technology. Now she understood why. They were desperate. You want me to help stabilize your genetics? Sarah asked, already seeing the fascinating possibilities. Or do you want me to? We need you to become part of our bloodline, Lyra interrupted, her form pulsing with intense colors. Your unique genetic structure, combined with your understanding of adaptive genetics, makes you ideal. Security alarms were blaring now. Sarah could hear footsteps approaching. Time grows short, Venna said, her voice carrying an edge of urgency. We offer you the chance to save an entire civilization, and in return, access to knowledge humanity has only dreamed of. But you must choose now. Sarah looked at her laboratory, years of research, grants, and careful experimentation. But here was the opportunity to leap centuries ahead, to solve problems she'd only theorized about. The footsteps were getting closer. If I agree, she said, choosing her words carefully, I have conditions. I continue my research. I maintain contact with Earth. And most importantly, I want to understand everything about your species. No more secrets. The High Matriarch's form brightened. You are wise to negotiate. We accept your terms, with one addition. You must also agree to bear children who will carry both our bloodlines. The laboratory doors burst open as Earth's security forces arrived, weapons drawn. But Sarah had already made her decision. She reached out and took the High Matriarch's crystalline hand. I accept. The world dissolved in a flash of light, leaving behind stunned security officers and a laboratory full of unanswered questions. As Sarah's consciousness adjusted to faster-than-light travel, she felt both exhilarated and terrified. She was about to become the first human to not just study alien life, but to help create it. Little did either species know that this unprecedented union would trigger a chain of events that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of both humanity and the Luminary, and uncover secrets that perhaps should have remained buried in the vast darkness of space. Royal tensions. The Luminary royal vessel, Stellar Ascendant, was unlike anything Sarah had imagined. Corridors seemed to breathe with bioluminescent light, and walls rippled like liquid crystal. But beneath the ethereal beauty, she sensed an undercurrent of decay. Microscopic imperfections in the living architecture caught her trained eye, signs of the genetic degradation the Luminary feared. "Your quarters," announced Lyra, leading Sarah into a chamber that adjusted its environment to human comfort levels. "Though I fail to understand why Mother grants you such autonomy. Traditional surrogates are kept in stasis between procedures." Sarah unpacked her hastily gathered research materials. "I'm not a traditional surrogate. Your mother accepted my terms because she knows cooperation yields better results than coercion." Some would call it weakness. Lyra's crystalline form darkened with emotion. "The High Council certainly does." "Lyra." Venna appeared in the doorway, her younger sister's form pulsing with gentler colors. "You speak too freely with the human." "The human has a name," Sarah interjected, setting up her portable diagnostic equipment. "And if we're to work together, we need honesty, not politics." The sisters exchanged looks that translated across species, the universal language of sibling disagreement. Venna moved closer, her curiosity overtaking protocol. "Is it true your kind bears children that are all different, without genetic programming?" "Natural genetic recombination," Sarah explained, seeing an opportunity to build trust. "It's why humans adapt so quickly. Every child is an experiment in survival." "Barbaric," Lyra muttered. "Fascinating," Venna countered. "Perhaps." A sharp chime interrupted them. The chamber's walls pulsed urgently. "The High Council demands audience," Lyra announced, her tone carrying warning. "They wish to examine the human." "Dr. Mitchell," Sarah corrected firmly, gathering her diplomatic resolve. "And I'll be happy to meet them, after I complete my initial analysis of your genetic structures." The sisters' crystalline forms flickered with surprise. Few dared to delay a council's summons. "You don't understand," Lyra pressed. "The council's authority exceeds even mothers in matters of reproduction. They've maintained genetic purity for 10,000 years." Sarah activated her scanning equipment, deliberately casual. "And how's that working out?" Before either sister could respond, the High Matriarch's presence filled the chamber. Unlike her daughter's crystalline forms, Zena's appearance had subtly changed. Her surface now showed fractal patterns that Sarah's trained eye recognized as signs of stress. "The council grows restless," Zena announced. "They fear your presence here, Dr. Mitchell. Humans are seen as unpredictable, dangerous. Some believe this experiment threatens the very foundation of our society." "With respect," Sarah replied, studying her preliminary scans, "your society's foundation is already crumbling. These readings confirm what I suspected. Your genetic programming is too perfect." "Impossible," Lyra objected. "Perfection is our strength." "Perfection is stagnation," Sarah countered, projecting her findings onto the chamber's walls. "Look, your genetic code doesn't allow for natural mutation. Each generation becomes more unstable because there's no room for adaptation. You're not just preventing errors, you're preventing evolution itself." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Venna moved closer to the projected data, her scientific curiosity overriding royal reserve. "Mother, these patterns, they match the ancient records, before the Great Programming." "Records that were sealed by council decree," Lyra warned, but her own form betrayed interest. High Matriarch Zena studied the data with growing concern. "The council approaches. Dr. Mitchell, are you certain of these findings?" "Certain enough to bet my life on it," Sarah replied, straightening her posture. "Which, apparently, I have." The chamber's entrance dissolved, revealing 5 imposing luminary forms. Unlike the royal family's crystalline appearance, the council members were almost opaque, their surfaces reflecting light like polished obsidian. High Matriarch, the lead council member's voice carried ancient authority. You overstep. This human's presence violates our most sacred laws. The genetic programming must remain pure. Sarah stepped forward, her voice clear and confident. Your sacred laws are killing you. But I can help, not by maintaining your genetic programming, but by teaching your species to embrace controlled adaptation. Blasphemy. Another council member surged forward, but stopped as Sarah calmly held up her data crystal. Call it what you want, but in the time we've been talking, I've already identified 3 viable paths to genetic stabilization. The question isn't whether I can help you. Sarah met each council member's gaze. The question is whether you can overcome your fear of change in time to save your children. The chamber crackled with tension. Sarah felt the weight of 10,000 years of tradition pressing against her human audacity. But in the subtle shifts of light and color around her, she also sensed something else: hope. The High Matriarch moved to stand beside her, a gesture whose significance wasn't lost on anyone present. The Council has guarded our genetic destiny since the Great Programming. But perhaps it is time to remember that before we programmed our genes, we were explorers, scientists, innovators. You would trust our species' future to this mammal. The Council leader's form rippled with indignation. No, Sarah answered before Xena could speak. You're going to trust your future to evidence, research, and the very adaptability your ancestors possessed. I'm just here to remind you how. As the council chambers erupted in argument, Sarah caught a glimpse of her reflection in the crystalline walls. She saw what the luminaries saw, a soft, imperfect being of flesh and blood. But she also saw what they needed to understand: that imperfection, guided by intelligence and courage, could be the strongest adaptation of all. Hidden agendas. In the 3 cycles since her arrival on the stellar ascendant, Sarah had learned to read the subtle vibrations of the living ship. Tonight, something was wrong. The usual crystalline harmonics had shifted to a discordant frequency that set her teeth on edge. She found Venna in the genetics lab, the younger princess's form flickering with distress as she studied ancient data crystals. They lied to us, Venna said without turning. The council, our ancestors, perhaps even mother. Show me, Sarah commanded, already pulling up her research interface. The data crystal's contents sprawled across the lab's living walls, genetic sequences that made her breath catch. These aren't degraded genetic codes. They're deliberate modifications. Precisely. Lyra's voice caught them both by surprise. The elder princess emerged from a hidden alcove, her crystalline form unusually opaque. Our species isn't dying, Dr. Mitchell. We're transforming. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. The instability in your genetic code, it's not random failure, it's an emergence pattern. She projected her latest analysis alongside the ancient data. Your bodies are trying to evolve. The programming is fighting it. Which is why the council's treatments only delay the inevitable. Lyra moved closer, her surface showing patterns Sarah had never seen before. But that's not the true secret, is it, sister? Venna's form dimmed. The human embryos show her. With a gesture, Lyra revealed another data set. Sarah's expertise in xenogenetics couldn't prepare her for what she saw. The genetic sequences from her preliminary breeding trials with the royal family showed something impossible. These markers, Sarah whispered, they're already present in your genome. Human DNA sequences, thousands of years old. She looked up at the sisters. You've done this before. Many times came the High Matriarch's voice. Xena appeared, her form more crystalline than Sarah had ever seen it. Across millennia, whenever our programming began to fail, we sought human genetic material. The council would erase the evidence, rebuild the programming, and the cycle would begin again. But why? Sarah demanded. Why maintain the programming if you knew it was artificial? Control, Lyra answered bitterly. As long as the Council controls reproduction, they control our species. A sudden tremor ran through the ship. The discordant vibrations intensified. They're trying to access the stasis chambers, Venna explained urgently, where we keep the genetic samples, including yours, Dr. Mitchell. No, Venna corrected, her form shifting to reveal hidden patterns of light. They're trying to access something far older, the first chamber. The ship shuddered again. Sarah grabbed her research terminal, backing up critical data. I'm assuming this first chamber isn't just a storage unit. It's where it all began, Zenna said. Where our ancestors first merged human and luminary DNA. Where the great programming was created to hide our true nature. Another violent tremor. Warning lights pulsed through the living walls. The Council fears what you've discovered, Lyra explained. They would rather destroy the evidence, and us, than let the truth emerge. Sarah's mind worked furiously. Your bodies aren't just trying to evolve, they're trying to remember. She projected a new analysis. These patterns in your genetic structure, they're not random mutations. They're stored memories, encoded in crystalline DNA. Impossible, Venna breathed, but her form rippled with recognition. Is it? Sarah challenged. Your entire ship is living crystal. Your bodies store and transmit light as information. Why not genetic memory? A massive shockwave rocked the ship. Alarms blared in alien frequencies. The first chamber has been breached, Zenna announced. The Council will destroy everything, unless... Unless what? Sarah demanded. Unless we complete the transformation, Lyra said. All of us. Now. Sarah looked at her research, at the impossible truth it revealed. You're not just asking for genetic material anymore, are you? You want me to help you become what you were always meant to be. What we both were meant to be, Venna corrected. The ancient records suggest humanity and the Luminari shared an origin, long ago. The Council's programming didn't just reshape our bodies, it rewrote our history. Another explosion rocked the ship. Through the crystalline walls, Sarah could see Council forces approaching, their forms dark and ominous. Well, Dr. Mitchell, the High Matriarch's form began to pulse with an inner light that seemed to resonate with Sarah's own genetic code. Will you help us remember? Sarah looked at her data one last time, at the evidence of an intertwined destiny spanning millennia. She thought of Earth, of evolution's endless dance of change and adaptation, of humanity's greatest strength, the courage to leap into the unknown. I'll help, she said, already modifying the genetic sequences. But we do this my way. No more programming, no more control. We let the codes express naturally. It could kill us all, Lyra warned. Or it could save you, Sarah countered, her fingers flying over the interface. Evolution isn't about perfection, it's about possibility. As Council forces breached the lab's outer barriers, Sarah initiated the sequence that would either destroy the Luminari's artificial programming or destroy them all. In that moment, as human and alien DNA began that ancient dance once more, she felt a curious sensation, as if her own cells were remembering something long forgotten. The chamber filled with light, and the true transformation began. Rising resistance. The transformation rippled through the stellar ascendant like a wave of liquid light. Sarah watched in awe as the genetic memories awakened, crystalline forms shifting and pulsing with ancient knowledge. But not everyone welcomed the change. Containment barriers failing in sectors 3 through 7, Venna reported, her form now a mesmerizing blend of crystalline structure and organic fluidity. Council loyalists are attempting to isolate and neutralize transformed chambers. Sarah's modified genetic sequence had worked better than she'd anticipated, perhaps too well. Throughout the ship, Luminari were awakening to their true nature, their bodies remembering what the great programming had forced them to forget. But those still bound by the old programming fought back with desperate fury. Multiple breaches detected, Lyra announced, her tactical training evident even as her own form continued to evolve. They're trying to reach the central core. If they shut down the ship's crystalline matrix, they'll kill us all, the High Matriarch finished. Her transformation was the most dramatic, layers of ancient programming dissolving to reveal something both alien and hauntingly familiar. Sarah worked frantically at her terminal, analyzing the cascade of genetic changes. The ship itself is part of the transformation. It's not just a vessel, it's a catalyst. She projected her findings onto the shifting walls. Look at these resonance patterns. The crystalline architecture isn't just responding to the changes, it's amplifying them. A massive explosion rocked the chamber. Through the translucent walls, they could see council forces advancing, their forms dark and rigid, wielding weapons that fired pulses of programmed energy designed to forcibly restore the old genetic patterns. Dr. Mitchell, a commanding voice echoed through the ship's communication matrix. You have released a corruption that will destroy everything we have preserved for millennia. Surrender now, and perhaps we can still save some of what you've tainted. Sarah stood her ground, even as she felt the ship's crystal matrix vibrating in harmony with her own DNA. You're wrong. I haven't corrupted anything. I've helped them remember what you made them forget. She turned to her allies. Show them what you really are. The High Matriarch stepped forward, her evolving form radiating power. Around her, both her daughters and dozens of transformed luminary gathered, their combined presence making the very fabric of the ship pulse with energy. We remember. Zena's voice carried the weight of recovered millennia. We remember what we were before the programming. We were explorers, designers of living ships that could cross galaxies. We merged with the crystals not to control them, but to learn from them, to grow with them. Lies. The council leader's form seemed to darken further, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. The programming saved us from chaos, from the weakness of organic uncertainty. Did it? Sarah challenged, projecting new data. Or did it trap you in a prison of false perfection? Look at your own history. Every time your people began to remember, you forced them to forget. Every time they started to evolve, you crushed them back into your crystalline cage. The ship shuddered as more council forces arrived, their weapons charging. But something was different now. Some of them hesitated, their forms showing hints of the same transformation affecting the others. You feel it, don't you? Venna called out to the wavering council forces, the memories in your own crystals, the truth in your own light. Sarah watched as confusion spread through the council ranks. More and more of them showed signs of changing, their rigid forms beginning to pulse with organic rhythms. But the council leader and their most devoted followers remained unchanged, their darkness seeming to deepen. If we cannot restore order, the council leader's voice had become a harsh discord, then we will end this abomination. Activate the purge protocols. No, Lyra's warning came too late. Throughout the ship, critical systems began to shut down. The living crystal walls dimmed as ancient failsafes initiated, designed to destroy the vessel rather than allow it to fall into corrupt hands. Sarah's mind raced. The ship wasn't just their battlefield, it was part of them, a living extension of the luminary themselves. If it died. The core, she shouted over the growing chaos. The ship's crystalline core, it must contain the original genetic pattern from before the programming, if we can reach it. Through there, the High Matriarch gestured toward a pulsing chamber deep within the ship. But the Council's forces guard it, and even if we reach it, interfacing with pure crystal matrix could destroy any organic matter instantly. Sarah looked at her hands, remembering the genetic analysis she'd done on herself since arriving. The luminary DNA hadn't just affected their species, traces of it existed in humanity too, dormant but present. Perhaps. I'll do it, she said, her voice firm. My human DNA, combined with the traces of your ancient genetics, it might be enough to survive the interface. Just get me to that core. The chamber erupted in battle as Council loyalists charged forward, their weapons clashing with the transformed luminary's newly remembered abilities. Sarah watched in amazement as crystalline forms shifted and flowed, ancient combat techniques emerging from genetic memory. But time was running out. Throughout the ship, systems continued to fail as the purge protocols spread. They had minutes, maybe less, to reach the core and prevent the destruction of not just the ship, but possibly the entire luminary species. Sarah felt the ship's crystal matrix resonating with her own cells as she prepared to make a run for the core. Everything she'd discovered, everything she'd helped awaken, had led to this moment. Yet, as she looked at the impossible challenge ahead, she couldn't help but smile. After all, adapting to impossible situations was humanity's greatest strength. The final battle for the Luminary's future was about to begin. The truth unveiled. The path to the ship's core became a gauntlet of chaos and revelation. Sarah ran alongside the transformed Luminary, ducking energy pulses that crystallized everything they touched. The ship's corridors twisted and reformed around them, as if the vessel itself was trying to protect them. The purge protocols are accelerating, Lyra called out, deflecting a council attack with her newly fluid form. We have minutes before total system collapse. Sarah's modified genetic scanner pulsed with increasing urgency. The closer they got to the core, the stronger the readings became. These energy signatures, they're identical to Earth's oldest crystal formations, the ones we could never explain. Because they were ours, Xena confirmed, her evolving form creating shields of living light around their group. Earth wasn't just another planet we visited, it was our first home. A massive barrier sealed the approach to the core chamber. Council forces had entrenched themselves, their weapons powered by the same dark energy that kept them bound to the old programming. Incoming transmission, Vena announced. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. The council leader's voice filled the corridor, distorted but unmistakable. This is your final warning. The human has awakened something that should have remained dormant. The great programming wasn't created to control us. It was created to protect the galaxy from what we once were. Sarah's scanner suddenly decoded a new layer of genetic data. Her eyes widened. They're right, but not in the way they think. She projected her findings onto the living walls. Look at these patterns. Your original form wasn't just crystalline or organic. You were both, and neither. What do you mean? Vena asked, even as she helped maintain their defensive position. You were metamorphs, Sarah explained, the pieces finally clicking into place. True shapeshifters, able to adapt your entire molecular structure. The crystalline form wasn't your natural state. It was a cage designed to lock you into a single controllable pattern. Lies. The council leaders' attack shattered their light shields, forcing them back. We chose the programming to prevent chaos, to maintain purity. No, the High Matriarch's voice carried newfound certainty. We chose it out of fear. Fear of our own potential. Fear of what we might become. Her form rippled with ancient memories finally unlocked. The Council didn't create the programming to protect the galaxy from us. They created it to protect us from ourselves. The ship groaned as more systems failed. The purge protocols were reaching critical levels. The core chamber, Sarah insisted. We have to reach it now. Lyra and Vena moved in perfect synchronization, their transformed bodies creating a corridor through the Council's defenses. The High Matriarch's power cleared the final obstacles, but the effort left her drained. Go, she commanded Sarah. We'll hold them here. The core chamber was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. A massive crystal structure pulsed with pure, unfiltered genetic information, the original template of what the Luminary had been before the programming. Beautiful, isn't it? The council leader's voice came from behind her. They followed her in, their dark form absorbing the core's light. Our perfect prison, crafted from our own fear. Perfect things don't evolve, Sarah countered, moving closer to the core. They don't grow. They just end. Better to end in perfection than dissolve into chaos. The leader raised their weapon. Step away from the core human. You cannot possibly survive direct contact with pure genetic matrix. Sarah looked at her scanner one last time, at the impossible dance of human and luminary DNA in her cells. Maybe not. But humanity's greatest strength isn't survival, she smiled. It's knowing when to take the risk anyway. She plunged her hands into the crystal core. Pain beyond imagination flooded her consciousness, but with it came something else: understanding. The core wasn't just a genetic template, it was a library of everything the luminary had been, everything they could be again. Through the agony, Sarah focused on what she'd learned about adaptation, about the beauty of imperfection, about the strength found in change. She felt her own DNA responding, merging with the core's patterns, showing it possibilities it had forgotten existed. The chamber erupted with light as the core responded. Throughout the ship, the purge protocols faltered as a new kind of programming began to spread, not rigid control, but infinite potential. The council leader screamed, their dark form unable to resist as ancient memories broke through their programming. Sarah watched through light-dazzled eyes as they transformed, darkness giving way to swirling colors that hadn't been seen in millennia. What? What have you done? They gasped, their form shifting between states of matter like liquid starlight. I reminded you, Sarah managed, her own body somehow surviving the impossible interface. Reminded you that true perfection isn't about maintaining a single form, it's about having the courage to become something new. Through the crystal walls, she could see the transformations spreading throughout the ship. The luminari were changing, remembering, becoming something both ancient and entirely new. Not just crystal, not just organic, but a fusion of all possibilities. And as the last of the old programming dissolved, Sarah realized she was changing too. Her human DNA hadn't just survived contact with the core, it had evolved, awakening potential that had lain dormant since humanity's own forgotten encounters with the original luminary. The truth they had all feared wasn't about destruction or chaos. It was about evolution itself, the endless dance of change that gave rise to all new forms of life. And now, as human and luminary DNA reunited after millennia apart, that dance was beginning again. A new dawn. 3 months after the transformation of the stellar ascendant, Earth's scientific community gathered in stunned silence as they witnessed the impossible. The vessel that appeared in orbit wasn't just a spaceship, it was a living cathedral of light, its crystalline structure flowing with organic grace that defied known physics. Sarah stood before the United Earth Council, her form subtly shifting between human and something gloriously other. Beside her, the former High Matriarch, now simply Xena, radiated a presence that made quantum sensors overload. What you're seeing isn't invasion or conquest, Sarah explained to the assembled leaders. It's reunion, a remembering of what both our species were always meant to become. The ship's living walls projected images of the transformed luminary society. Where once there had been rigid hierarchy and controlled reproduction, now there was endless variation. Former council members flowed like liquid starlight, while their children explored forms that married organic creativity with crystalline precision. The genetic potential was always there, Sarah continued, displaying her research data. In both our species, the luminari didn't need human DNA just for reproduction. They needed it to remember what they'd lost. And humanity, she smiled, her form momentarily prismatic. We needed to remember too. You're talking about directed evolution, Earth's chief scientist interjected. Conscious transformation of our entire species. The implications are exactly what both humanity and the luminary feared. All those millennia ago, Lyra appeared, her transformed state a testament to how far they'd come. Fear of our own potential drove us to create the programming. Fear kept humanity's dormant abilities suppressed. Xena materialized next to her sister, cradling a child that shifted forms like a living kaleidoscope. But our children have no such fears. They're born into possibility, not programming. The Earth Council chambers erupted in debate. Some demanded quarantine, Others wanted immediate access to the transformation process. A few called for military action, while visionaries saw the dawn of a new age. Sarah raised her hand, and the crystalline genetics she now shared with the ship dimmed the lights. In the sudden quiet, her voice carried the weight of both human wisdom and luminary memory. I understand your fears. 3 months ago, I was just a xenobiologist who thought she was chosen for a breeding program. Instead, I discovered that humanity's greatest strength isn't our adaptability, it's our courage to face change. She gestured, and the chamber filled with a dynamic display of DNA structures, dancing between forms that shouldn't have been possible. The Luminari once ruled galaxies, not through conquest, but through transformation. They could become anything, adapt to any environment, merge with any compatible life form to create something greater than the sum of its parts. But that very power terrified them. They locked themselves into crystalline forms, created the programming to forget their true nature. And humanity, someone asked, what was our role in all this? Xena stepped forward, her presence softening. You were our inspiration. When we first discovered Earth, humans were just beginning to evolve sentience. But in you, we saw something precious, the ability to change without fear, to adapt without losing your essence. We left markers in your DNA, hoping that one day, when both our species were ready, the markers would activate, Sarah finished, allowing controlled transformation while maintaining our fundamental identity. She demonstrated by shifting her form through several variations, each one clearly still Sarah, yet adapted to different potential environments. But the choice must be yours, Lyra added. Unlike the programming, we won't force this change. Each human, like each luminary, must choose their own path. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity stood on the brink of becoming something new, not by abandoning their nature, but by finally embracing its full potential. There will be challenges, Sarah acknowledged. Questions of identity, of society, of what it means to be human when your form can change. But I've seen the future our children could have, a future where adaptation doesn't mean loss, where change brings strength, where the barriers between species fall away to reveal something greater. She turned to face the Earth Council directly, her form stabilizing into its most human aspect. 10,000 years ago, Phila drove two species apart. Today, we have the chance to remember not just what we were, but what we could become. The first volunteers stepped forward within hours. Within weeks, the transformation had begun spreading naturally, passing from parent to child, awakening dormant potential that had waited millennia to flourish. And in the nursery of the stellar ascendant, watched over by both human and luminary caretakers, the first true hybrid children began to grow. Their forms shifted with their dreams, their DNA danced between species, and their existence proved what both humanity and the luminary had forgotten, that the most beautiful forms of life are those free to become whatever they might be. Sarah stood in that nursery now, watching the next generation explore their infinite potential. Beside her, Xena's form rippled with motherly pride. Was it worth it? The former high matriarch asked. All the risk, the pain of transformation, the fear of change. Sarah watched as a child shifted from crystalline light to organic matter and back, laughing with pure joy at each new form. In that laugh, she heard the future, not just of humanity or the luminary, but of life itself, finally free to dance its ancient dance once more. Look at them, she said softly. They're not afraid of what they might become. They're excited to discover it. She smiled as her own form shifted slightly, resonating with the ship's living crystal. And really, isn't that what evolution was always meant to be? Not a prison of perfection, but an endless adventure of becoming. The stars seemed to shine brighter as the stellar ascendant continued its journey, carrying within it the seeds of a transformation that would reshape not just two species, but the very meaning of life itself. The age of rigid forms and fearful programming was over. The age of infinite possibility had begun.